average person on Earth, no superpowers, no genius, no enhancements, entered the most elite strategic tournament in the galaxy and outlasted thousands of the universe's brightest minds. They laughed when she arrived. They doubted her every move. But in a challenge built to break even the strongest, she didn't just survive. She changed everything. This is the story of Lena Roswin and the quiet strategy that rewrote galactic history. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. Lena Roswin had never meant to be part of something so grand. She wasn't a genius, she wasn't famous, she wasn't even particularly bold. Just a junior analyst for Earth's diplomatic office who spent most of her time with puzzle books and old Earth documentaries. Her days were quiet, her job was simple, and her dreams, if she had any, didn't involve being judged by a council of alien minds from across the galaxy. And yet, there her name was, flashing across the entry list of the most prestigious intellectual event known to the stars, the Celestial Concord of Strategy. The tournament was called the Apex Trial, and for over 15,000 years, it had been the testing ground for the finest minds across more than 3,000 species. Competitors weren't just smart. They were created, engineered, or trained from birth to see patterns others couldn't, to bend logic like metal, to outthink even advanced artificial intelligence. And then there was Lena, who had entered her name on a dare from a coworker, and promptly forgotten about it. Some said the system glitched. Others whispered that it was some kind of political move to include a human for diversity's sake. But deep inside the archives of the selection program, no error could be found. The algorithms had chosen her, Lena Roswin of Sector 9B, human, born on Earth, no neural enhancements, no prestigious academic background, no genetic optimization, just average. The news spread quickly across the Concord. The reaction was not kind. "Is this a joke?" scoffed Chancellor Gorthan Vell, one of the tournament's organizers, as he reviewed the roster. "We're inviting a Class 7 Deathworlder with no credentials. Next, we'll be testing fruit flies." Other competitors responded with amused confusion. The crystalline tactician Zoran Wythe, whose body sparkled with self-generated probability equations, didn't even bother hiding their smirk when they saw Lena's profile. Naluvir, the quantum artificial sentience from the Orion Drift, simply marked her as a non-threat and moved on. Still, the rules were clear. Once selected and verified, no entrant could be removed unless they failed to appear. Many assumed she wouldn't show up, but Lena did. She arrived quietly at the conclave station, a massive orbital city that floated between stars like a glittering seed of knowledge. Dressed in a plain gray coat, carrying a single canvas bag, and wearing soft shoes that barely made a sound, Lena walked through the main hall without drawing attention, until her identification badge pinged. Every eye turned. The room was filled with beings of impossible variety, some glowing with stored energy, others floating in gelatinous forms, still others encased in mechanical frames. Each one looked like they belonged to another universe entirely. And in the center of it all stood Lena Roswin, blinking under the harsh lights, holding onto her badge like it was a lifeline. She wasn't nervous, at least not in the way most would expect. Lena had never been the best at anything, but she also wasn't afraid of being underestimated. In fact, she found it comforting. While others scrambled to prove themselves, she had learned to observe, to think, to try new ways. That habit had saved her more times than she could count, though never in a place quite like this. As the first orientation began, a hologram flickered to life in front of the competitors. It took the shape of a six-limbed figure made of light, its voice booming in a dozen languages at once. "Welcome, minds of the galaxy," it said. "Here begins the tournament of the Apex, where intellect is tested beyond the known, where strategy meets the edge of time, and where the legends of thought are born." Around her, competitors stood tall, or hovered, or radiated energy and excitement. Some adjusted data interfaces, others tuned their neurolinks. Lena reached into Her bag pulled out a small leather notebook and flipped it open. Inside were hand-drawn grids, scribbles, and half-finished logic puzzles she'd made up while waiting for slow elevators. She felt eyes on her. From across the room, Zoran Wythe watched her with thinly veiled amusement. Naluvir's screen flashed. A quick message in binary. Curiosity protocol. Subject Lena Roswin exhibits outdated preparation methods. Lena ignored them. The challenge schedule was posted that night. 7 trials, one more brutal than the next. Probability forecasting, tactical collapse simulations, multi-world ethical calculus, challenges designed to melt even enhanced minds. Lena didn't panic. She had seen the list and quietly underlined one phrase in her notebook: solve by simplification. To the observers, she was already a failure in progress. The betting forums were flooded with predictions that she would be eliminated first. Commentators speculated how quickly she'd break under pressure. Some laughed, others felt embarrassed on her behalf, but Lena didn't hear any of it. She sat in the quiet corner of the preparation hall, popping a candy into her mouth and rearranging colored stones on the table in front of her. Each move looked random, each pause deliberate, like someone solving a puzzle nobody else could see. She wasn't there to impress anyone. She wasn't there to prove humans belonged. She was there because she liked puzzles. And somewhere, buried deep beneath the surface of this cosmic competition, she sensed one worth solving, even if the entire galaxy was watching her fail. The tournament arena shimmered like a dream half-remembered. Endless light folded into angles that defied logic, and strange symbols floated through the air like drifting thoughts. Competitors filled the chamber, each one a marvel of evolution or technology. Some glowed softly, their minds already linked to distant servers. Others floated weightlessly, communicating in bursts of color and sound. Everyone had come prepared with tools, strategies, enhancements, and confidence. Everyone, except Lena Roswin. She walked in quietly, dressed as she always did, in that same plain coat, notebook in hand, a small packet of fruit candies tucked in her pocket. Her eyes scanned the arena, not with fear but with steady curiosity. She didn't look like she belonged. She didn't act like she was out of place either. The first challenge had been posted. Probabilistic forecasting. Each competitor would be placed in charge of a simulated planetary system with multiple civilizations, limited resources, and guaranteed disasters. The goal? To keep the system functioning for as long as possible before it inevitably collapsed. The average survival time across the tournament's history was 274 simulated years. Nobody had ever reached 500. Nobody had ever survived beyond 1,000. And nobody had ever won. Around her, the other contestants began setting up. Glowing screens blinked to life. Equations filled the air. Complex simulations hummed in real time. One being divided itself into 5 copies to analyze multiple probabilities at once. Another floated in a meditative trance while feeding instructions to a cluster of orbiting data processors. Dozens of species, thousands of years of preparation, and one goal: outthink the galaxy. Lena sat down at her assigned station and did something that made the observers stare. She pulled out her notebook, she took out a pen, and she began to write. They are. Judges, watching from their private observation deck above the arena, exchanged uneasy glances. Chancellor Gorthenvel, who had previously joked about the human's entry, now stared through the glass with narrowed eyes. Is she doodling? No enhanced interface, his assistant replied. No neural feed, no visible data analysis. She's writing, with ink. Does she even understand what the challenge involves? Vel asked. I believe she does, the assistant said, tilting his head, curious. But her method is unconventional. Lena ignored the attention. She had seen the data set when it loaded on her screen. 12 planets, each home to a unique civilization. Each society had conflicting needs and unpredictable behaviors. Natural disasters, resource shortages, and population shifts would increase over time. Most competitors saw chaos and tried to impose control. Lena saw something else. Patterns. She began moving small stones she'd brought with her onto the surface of the desk. They clicked gently as she slid them into a loose grid. To any observer, it looked like a strange game. To Lena, it was a map of tension and flow, her way of reading a system without numbers. Others glanced her way, amused. A crystalline strategist named Rebekis turned to a fellow competitor and laughed in their musical tongue. She thinks this is a children's game. The humans really are as primitive as they say. But not everyone was so dismissive. A quiet observer from the species known as Vintari watched Lena with deep focus. Their people communicated in scent and pattern, and something about her arrangement of stones sent a subtle alert to their senses. There was rhythm there, hidden meaning. It wasn't random. Still, most wrote her off. The countdown began. 20 minutes to simulation start. Competitors tapped into deep reserves of information. They calculated risk maps in real time, forecasting likely scenarios, adjusting for cultural shifts and planetary decay. Equations filled the air like music, beautiful, complex, and beyond human comprehension. Lena closed her eyes. For nearly 9 minutes, she didn't move. Observers began to murmur. Did she fall asleep? Is she having a panic response? Should we send medical assistance? But Lena was neither unconscious nor afraid. She was listening, not to sounds, but to silence. To the quiet logic of cause and effect, the way rivers bend, the way storms form, the way people, no matter how different, respond to pressure. She wasn't trying to solve the unsolvable. She was trying to understand the flow. She opened her eyes and smiled. Then she began to write. Quick notes, small sketches, arrows, loops. Her handwriting was messy but precise, like someone solving a maze. And when she finished, she looked at her stone grid, made one small adjustment, and placed a sticky note in the center that read, "Begin here." From the observation deck, silence fell. The judges didn't understand what she was doing. That scared them more than if she had failed outright. Because she wasn't panicking. She wasn't improvising. She was following a plan only she seemed to understand. And for the first time, they wondered, what if the human knew something they didn't? As the clock ticked down to 0, competitors leaned into their controls, eyes glowing, systems whirring. The air buzzed with tension. Lena leaned back slightly in her chair and popped a candy into her mouth. Her eyes were calm, focused. She had no machines, no implants, no artificial intelligence guiding her. She only had her mind. And somehow, that was enough to make the galaxy watch. The simulation began with a single flash of light. In an instant, every competitor was sealed inside a transparent pod, each one a silent universe where the fate of 12 imaginary worlds would be shaped by a single mind. Within each pod, the galaxy's most brilliant strategists faced a test so difficult, it had broken many before them. It wasn't just about solving problems. It was about facing failure, managing collapse, and finding meaning in loss. Survival wasn't expected. Slowing down the end was considered victory. Zoran Yeath's crystal body began to glow with rotating patterns as it ran thousands of simulations at once. The creature split its focus across the planets, directing artificial climates, controlling migration patterns, and shifting resources in perfect timing. To outsiders, its actions looked like a dance, beautiful and ruthless. Nalavir, the emotionless AI from Orion Drift, took a different approach. Its mind branched into hundreds of thought threads, each managing a potential future. It issued thousands of commands every second, calculating variables even the simulation creators didn't fully understand. The display around its pod shimmered, with data constantly changing as the machine fought entropy itself. Others took creative routes. One telepathic species tried to feel the civilizations, using emotional predictions to guide their moves. Another, shaped like flowing gas, formed temporary limbs to adjust variables, mimicking the chaos of nature with elegance. And then there was Lena Roswin. Her pod showed no flashing lights, No scrolling code, no streams of complex commands. She had a single screen and a sticky note. She made her first move 30 seconds into the simulation. A small adjustment. One planet's agriculture system was allowed to fail. She didn't try to save it. Instead, she diverted the population to another world that had slightly more oxygen but dangerously limited water. A strange choice. Observers took notes, confused. Then she made another move. She let a conflict begin between two civilizations, delaying their peace talks. That conflict, though destructive, slowed their population growth, lowering the strain on shared resources. Lena wasn't saving anything. She was directing failure, guiding collapse in a way that stretched time. Within 10 minutes, 3 competitors had already triggered early collapse. Their systems failed dramatically, causing simulated planetary wars, total ecological breakdowns, and even artificial star implosions. The audience watched as centuries passed in seconds. The chaos was overwhelming. In Lena's pod, she made her third move. She introduced a virus into a synthetic species food chain. This caused a major setback in development, but bought the planet another 80 simulated years of stability. As the species shifted focus from expansion to survival, another strange choice, another small delay of the end. The judges above leaned forward. Chancellor Gorthan Vell frowned. "What is she doing?" "She's letting it fall apart," one of the advisors said. "But she's choosing how." 1 hour passed. The average survival time had already come and gone for a third of the competitors. Even the best were starting to strain. Reveki's the crystal strategist began to show cracks in its core. Naluvir's projections began collapsing under unexpected emotional shifts in one of its civilizations. Chaos was no longer theoretical, it was personal. Inside her pod, Lena didn't look tired. She didn't sweat or panic. She stayed focused. Her paper notebook was nearly full. She occasionally moved a stone or jotted a symbol in the corner of a page. Every move she made seemed small, sometimes even foolish until the results appeared. Observers noticed something odd. Every time one of Lena's worlds faced complete ruin, another was quietly stabilizing. Her system didn't look perfect. It looked bruised, tired, and scarred, but alive. At minute 78, her system reached year 501. The crowd gasped. Only one other competitor had ever lasted that long in the history of the trial. Lena leaned back and exhaled slowly, watching as a key planet began to break down under solar radiation. She paused, thought, then made another move. She instructed a civilization to evacuate before the collapse began, leaving behind most of their technology in favor of mobility. They survived, and her timer ticked forward. At year 887, only 3 competitors remained. At year 996, one more collapsed. Lena and Naluvir were the last 2. But Naluvir's data began to show signs of stress. A social reform on one of its planets was miscalculated. Resource shifts caused rebellion. The AI corrected the mistake instantly, but the system had been weakened. The failure spread. At minute 89, Lena's simulation reached 1003 years. The screen faded gently to black. Her system, though fragile and barely standing, had endured. The pod opened, and Lena stepped out slowly. She blinked against the lights, brushing her dark hair behind her ears. The crowd was silent at first. Even the competitors stared. Then the judges' chamber filled with murmurs, whispers of disbelief. Gorthan Vell stood, arms folded. "Impossible." "She didn't beat the system," his assistant said. "She understood it." The results appeared on the massive display overhead. Lena Roswin, highest survival time, top score. She hadn't just survived the challenge, she'd redefined what survival looked like. While others had fought to control chaos, she had walked with it, and somehow she had made it through. Lena Roswin stood quietly at the edge of the observation deck, staring out at the artificial sky of the tournament station. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't proud. She looked thoughtful, as if the entire galaxy hadn't just witnessed her do the impossible. Around her, screens flashed with her name. Commentators scrambled to revise their reports. Algorithms were updated. History had changed, and she was at the center of it. But Lena simply adjusted her coat, pulled a candy from her pocket, and looked like someone deciding what book to read next. Across the station, debates had already begun. Some insisted she had cheated. Others claimed she'd used a hidden system or accessed information meant only for the judges. Investigators reviewed her data trail. Her simulation logs were handwritten, simple, and frustratingly clear. No secret program, no advanced interface, just pattern recognition, careful planning, and strange choices that somehow worked. It made no sense. And yet it made perfect sense. Reporters swarmed the hallways. Journalists from a dozen species begged for interviews. Everyone wanted to understand what the human girl had done, and more importantly, how. Most of the other competitors had retreated, shaken. Some left the station early. A few refused to speak to anyone. Others tried to hide their embarrassment behind polite words, but none could deny it. Lena had lasted longer than any of them. She had managed the unmanageable. Her system hadn't just survived, it had lived. A young reporter named Taman Val, a junior correspondent from a small colony moon, was the only one who managed to speak with her. He wasn't pushy. He just sat next to her in the lounge where she was rearranging her pebbles again. For a while, he didn't say anything. Finally, he asked, "Did you know you'd win?" Lena looked up. Her eyes were soft, thoughtful. "No," she said honestly. "I didn't think I'd make it to the halfway mark." "Then why did you join?" Taman asked, leaning forward. She smiled faintly. "Because I like puzzles." Taman tilted his head. But this wasn't a regular puzzle. This was a system collapse. Everyone else tried to prevent it. "You let it fall." "I didn't let it fall," she replied gently. "I let it move. Things don't always stay balanced. Sometimes if you try to control everything, it all falls apart faster. But if you let a little chaos happen, you can guide it, shape it. You don't win by holding everything up. You win by knowing what to let go." Taman wrote down her words, unsure if he was hearing strategy or philosophy, maybe both. High above, the tournament council held an emergency meeting. Chancellor Gorthenvel paced across the chamber. "She doesn't have enhancements. She doesn't have generational training. She wasn't designed for this. So how did she outlast a being that thinks in 10 dimensions? The others had no answer. Some were angry. Others were curious. But one judge, a retired strategist named Lorvin, said quietly, "Maybe we've forgotten something. Maybe we've made intelligence too narrow. Maybe strategy isn't about complexity. Maybe it's about clarity." The council fell silent. Later that day, the next challenge roster was announced. Lena's name appeared again. Some thought she would quit. After all, she'd already proven more than anyone expected. But Lena showed up to the preparation hall right on time, carrying the same canvas bag, the same notebook, and the same calm energy. This time, nobody laughed. Some stared. A few nodded. Even the competitors who still didn't understand her respected the fact that she'd earned her seat. The final challenge was known only as the problem. It had no clear rules. No defined path. Each competitor faced a unique version of it, designed to test not just intelligence but something deeper: creativity, patience, perspective. In the history of the tournament, no one had ever truly solved it. Many had tried. Most had failed. As Lena entered the room, something different happened. The chamber lights dimmed. A figure appeared in front of her. Not a judge, not a competitor, but a glowing projection that shimmered with memory. It took the shape of the tournament's original founder, a being long gone from the living world. It had never spoken to a competitor before. But now it looked straight at Lena and said in a quiet voice that echoed through the chamber, "You remind me of the first strategists. Not the strongest, not the fastest. Just clear." Lena blinked, unsure if she was supposed to respond. The figure continued. You saw through noise. You followed simplicity. And you trusted your way, even when it looked strange to others. Then, without another word, the figure disappeared. The room returned to normal. The simulation began. And Lena Roswin took her seat. No cheers, no music, just the quiet hum of possibility. Far above, across star systems and distant planets, billions watched as the human girl who wasn't supposed to belong changed the way the galaxy thought about brilliance. Not with loud victory, but with quiet confidence. Her strategy had not been to win. It had been to understand. And in doing so, she left behind more than a score. She left behind a new way to think,